Welcome to the Mighty Dragon. Today's guest is actor John Bucy. He plays Roger in the new series of Frasier. Like Frasier, John is a Boston native but has set up home in Los Angeles to build his acting career. It was a great time to catch up with John as he navigates his way in the new Hollywood. Oh, thank you for joining me here. I've got a few questions for you about your acting career and also about Frasier and all of those
Mm.
things. First of all, what drew you to acting as a career?
Well, it was kind of the first thing I ever wanted to do. So it wasn't so much as like a path I took as much as I didn't take any other path. That was kind of the first thing I ever wanted to
Yeah,
do. I was just glued to the TV as a kid and just always wanted to be on the TV. And, I got home videos saying I wanted to be a movie star and shit. And so, and a lot of kids say that, but something for some reason I was just, emboldened enough to keep going. I just started doing theater as soon as I could, and my parents were supportive. My mom lived in LA for a brief stint, so she was kind of less skeptical of the idea of an acting career than some parents might have been. And she helped me find an agent in like middle school, and so I booked a couple random things in high school, and it just always felt very possible to me. Obviously, people gave me horror stories the whole time of don't do
yeah.
this, but I got a very good piece of advice from a really great theater director, Francesca James, early on in my career. Said, if you can do anything else and be happy, do it. And
Right.
I knew I was like, this is really the only thing I can see myself doing. And now I know why she said that, but that doesn't stop me now. I mean,
Right.
long story
So,
short, I just love performing, entertaining, and love, TV and film myself as a consumer. So to be a part of that medium and, be able to impact that. And I love theater, I love film, and just love storytelling. So end of sentence.
great. Um, we know you as Roger in Frasier. Can you tell me a bit how you got that part and what do you like about that character?
Yeah, so that was the result of my awesome reps, my agent Jillian Neal, or my manager Jillian Neal, and my agent Melissa Berger Brennan with CESD, and basically I just taped for it. I kind of got out for a couple of CBS things, and they liked it. Sent it to producer. It was a pretty open and shut case. It was just that cold open, and I read it as pretty okay. This is a job, big dumb jock to a certain extent. It's like I can play that. I go for a
Yeah,
couple of those. Yeah. And what do I like about I mean, he's just a part of Roger lives in me. I want to say of just just a giant golden retriever and super easy to just have. In comedy, you kind of have there's either there's a crazy person, the straight man, and then there's like the lover and the hater to a certain extent. And Roger's very much like the lover
yeah,
in that scene of just like the heart being shut down,
right.
heart again being shut, and that's
Yeah,
always a fun thing to play of just
yeah,
like the bright-eyed bushy-tailedness.
yeah, yeah. Can you share any like funny behind the scene moments for you on set?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. There was me and Kevin Daniels who plays Tiny playing chess on the actual chess set in the thing, at all times, and probably when we shouldn't be. There was well, this was my first time doing multicam comedy. And so I didn't know, there's this whole table read, and then there's the rehearsals, and then there's
Yeah,
the blocking. It's very theatrical as opposed to most films. You just get there, do the lines, and go home.
yeah,
And so that was very fun,
yeah,
especially coming from a theater background. And of course, I start
right.
out with a certain amount of lines, and then they do rewrites every time. And then I come in one day, and they'd taken away one of my lines, and I was like, it's my fault. Like it's all about me. Like
Oh,
obviously it's a complete result of my reading and nothing to do with like the writers wanting to
yeah,
change the writing. Yeah, it's all about me. Basically, I'm kind of a little like, that day. And then a
yeah,
couple hours later, my agent said they want to bring me back and throw me in episode 4 for like a reshoots. And I was like, oh, okay.
right.
Maybe I'm not, yeah, maybe I'm reading too into things.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so that was great that they, didn't hate me enough to bring me back another thing, throw me in the classroom. And then I don't even know if I should be admitting this last part, but there was a segment on the actual taping night. I was just so excited. My friends were there. I was hanging out with Kevin Daniels and I'm forgetting his name, but another lovely guy. And we're just outside. They got like the food truck outside. We're kind of smoking. We're hanging out. I'd already done my cold open. So I'm like, I'm off the clock, of course. And I
Yeah.
forget that I'm in the other, even though in the actual shooting, you can't even see me in it. But there's another classroom scene where I'm just supposed to be in and then exit. And of course, I'm out there eating some like loaded fries or whatever. And they're like, where's John? Where's John? I'm like, oh shit. Like, it was just a very, throw the fries, run to set, get in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Kelsey wasn't
Yeah.
waiting, was he? They're like, no, Kelsey wasn't. All right, thank God. As long as I was here before Kelsey.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
that was just kind of a getting back into the theater swing of things, where it's like you got to be on your mark at the certain time as opposed to film. It's there's no, you're not gonna miss it. But that was a lump in my
Yeah.
throat for a sec there.
Oh my gosh. Talking about Kelsey, what's it like working with him? What do you learn from someone like Kelsey Grammer?
Well, Kelsey and Nicholas Hurst, I both found,
Yeah.
who plays Alan. I had never knew who Nicholas Hurst was before, but I really found him to be quite impressive in his comedic chops. But just any old pro like that who has just done it so long, and they've done multicams their whole life, and it's just their bread and butter. There's just a certain ease to it, and as a young comedian, there is, well, a young actor who does comedy. There is a certain inclination to go big, to feel like you're not doing enough, to feel like I gotta fill the space with something fun, high energy, like Chris Farley, Jack Black, like get in there, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
And watching them who just have such an ease with it and just understand that the text is good enough on its own if you play it right, and they have a lot of like deadpan monotone stuff, so it kind of works with that. But there is a certain ease that once you've been trying to make people laugh for so long, maybe it's just an expectation that the audience already thinks you're funny, and maybe it's just confidence, but I'm always impressed by the ability to do less and kind of get more out of it, whereas I'm feeling like I'm pushing sometimes to try and to elicit that result.
Right. I think Nicholas has such a long career in British television. So
Yeah.
how do you prepare for a new character and immerse yourself in that role?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of two questions, because the
Yeah.
your first idea is just what you get when you get the script for the audition, and then when you're lucky enough to book it, then there's a second series of homework that goes into it. And so with auditioning, you really don't know what they want ever. So it's like, do I
Right.
go with my first thought or my second thought or my third thought? How many takes do I give them? Am I trying to fit the role? Am I trying to subvert the role? Am I trying to be bold? Am I trying to be, low and cool and easy? And it doesn't even matter, like off the
Yeah.
cuff. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that. And it's a lot of just like on the day, how I feel, how I read it at that certain point. And there's no point in trying to figure out what they want anyway, because the casting directors often don't know what they want to
Yeah.
a lot of times. So a lot of times you just got to go with your gut, and then that's kind of the jumping off point for when you do get the role. And again, it kind of depends on the role. I'm a big journaler when I know I have a role that has some girth to it. I didn't feel the need to journal with Roger. He was a pretty, off the chest. Feel like I know who this guy is.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, and again with single cam versus multicam, I find it worlds apart, because multicam, it's all about the script. The jokes are
Right.
built in, like you just have to find them. Just like it's bang joke, bang joke, bang. So like everything can be mined for comedy. It's all in the script, and the script is king. There's no ad lib, so you're not like, you have to find what you need to find within the script. Whereas with a lot of single cam, I find that the script is not as king. It's not as paramount, especially if it's a writer director. They're willing to kind of work with you and give you, the freedom to use your own language to an extent. And so when it comes to more of like where the character has more of an arc, then I feel the need to kind of figure out who this guy is, give him some more history, do some more journaling, kind of figure out X, Y, and Z. And a lot of it has to come from like conversations with director. I mean, I didn't have any conversation with Kelsey about Roger, but on other projects, a lot of it is kind of wondering what the writer's perspective was going into this as opposed to my take, because sometimes it's exactly what they wanted, sometimes it's completely different. I did a horror film with Andy Fickman where I auditioned 3 times over the course of a month for this one role, didn't get the role, and then he hires me for another main
Ah.
role, which I never auditioned for. And so I'm kind of going into it like, I don't know what you want from me because I've never even read these lines before. Now I'm flying to New York. So
Oh, how
I'm like,
confusing.
right, exactly. I literally texted him. I was like,
Yeah.
why did you cast me? And he's like, you got the
There
look.
was
And
obviously
I'm
something there. There was
clearly,
something
right?
there that,
So it's really case by case of like who wrote it
yeah,
with what intention, and other parts where I am kind of the subversive pick. And I'm very different from what they imagined the role to be. And then it's kind of
yeah.
like finding that on my own. So it really just comes on like on the day. I feel every time I send an audition, a lot of times I'm like, oh, that was a cool choice. Oh, that was terrible. Blah 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 blah. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know
Yes.
how they feel about it.
What challenges that you've faced in your career and how did you overcome them?
Well, um, I won't just like blatantly say all the obvious challenges that come with being an actor of there's, a million of us and 1,000 of us are talented and then 10 of
Yes.
us get to work. But like, I guess, for me personally, I went to Emerson College in Boston and I graduated in 2020 and I moved
Right.
straight to LA during the pandemic,
Yeah.
September 2020. So that was a little of a soft start. That was the first obstacle.
Yes.
Everything was shut down. No one was, hiring, casting, blah blah blah, and it was just kind of a slow start to LA. And luckily, managed to get reps, managed to get some work, and able to land on my feet. And then fast forward 2 years later, and there's a huge strike with the writers and actors. So that was another kind of
Yeah.
timely challenge. So I'm kind of coming in an awkward zone of time, but now that that's
Mm.
over, I feel good about the deal. I'm feeling good about 2024, but there were some hiccups there, just out of my control. Aside from that, I mean,
Yes.
it's interesting from my perspective coming in 2020, right? Because a lot of people say LA is so different before the pandemic. The industry is so different before the pandemic. Because when I was in Boston, I would go to casting directors' offices and audition and do the thing. And coming to LA, you know, I've done hundreds of self tapes and probably less than 10 in-person auditions, right? So
Right.
it's really changed the game, in good ways and bad ways. It's a pro con, I get to do it from the comfort of my home and do it as many times as I want, but then I'm never meeting
Yeah.
the casting director, and so there's just
Yeah.
a lot of differences that come into that, and whereas other people kind of know what it was like before, I have a very you know fuzzy version of what it looked like before. So kind of coming in during that new landscape was, I think, a learning curve where not a lot of people could tell me how it works because they didn't know how it worked. So it's been a lot to kind of navigate. Luckily I feel right. I'm on Frasier, but
Yeah.
it's
Fantastic.
yeah. And besides that, I've really been trying to get into voiceover, and I have great voice reps and going on for a lot of stuff. But God, that's another tough market. If I thought acting was a tough
Yeah.
market, voiceover is even tougher.
And stand-up comedy as well, right?
Stand-up comedy, yeah, I love stand-up comedy as a consumer and as a performer. But, at the end of the day, kid version of me did not want to be a stand-up comic. They wanted to be an act, like actors kind of day one dream, and stand-up comedy was kind of born out of being in LA for a year, didn't have any reps, didn't have any audition, didn't have any leads, didn't have any way to perform. I was just, and coming out of a conservatory theater program where you're doing like, scenes and acting, 6 hours a day with the same people. And it's just so much artistic fulfillment. I kind of felt like I needed some of that. I wanted to write, but I couldn't produce something for the life of myself. I've written scripts, but the producing part's a whole different, angle. And
Yeah.
that was something that for me, I felt like I could write, I could go to the club and just do. I didn't need to ask for permission. I didn't need to get funding. I didn't need to get cast. It was just something that I could do. It was something I always wanted to try too.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm fun. It seems like something I would eventually do anyway. So I really got into it for a year and had a lot of fun. I did a couple clubs and just kind of slowed down a little. And my passion for it petered out. And I
All
still
right.
do love it, but acting is what I need to do, and stand-up comedy is something I want to do, and I only
Right.
have so much like effort and time, and I kind of like my priorities are very clear. So at a certain point, it was like if I'm not getting enough from this, then I don't want to be devoting myself to this as well. Like comedy, like music, like acting, like right, it's its own fucked up ladder to climb. So I'm,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I'm already on a ladder. I'm,
Yeah,
feeling committed to this ladder. That's a great ladder,
yes,
but not for me.
fair enough. Are there any dream roles or projects that you would like to be part of in the future?
God, that's such a hard question because I see movies all the time where I was like, God, I would love to be in that movie. God, I would love to play that part. But like now, like they're gonna remake that movie. In terms of like existing franchises or IP,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. A part of the kid me always wanted to do like a superhero thing, but now in recent years, I'm kind of like,
right.
not so much. But another nerdy answer is like the Game of Thrones universe, like House of Dragons. I feel like
Yeah,
that show has some
amazing.
leg. I was very impressed with that show, especially
Yeah.
with what they did with the end of Game of Thrones, and then, oh, it's a, and I read the book, so I was excited to see what they did with it, and I was really
Oh,
pleased with what they did with it. So I'm looking forward to season two,
yeah.
and would love. I think it has legs. I would love to be on season 3 or 4 or something. But big dreams. Besides that, voiceover again is a market I really want to break into. I've always loved adult animations and anime, and so
Right.
the idea of like voicing an
Yes.
iconic anime character or like comic character for me would be very cathartic.
Yeah.
Or like a video game character, and then my buddies and I are playing as my character. A lot of things that would be some childhood dreams.
Great. How do you balance staying true to a character versus bringing your own unique interpretation to a role?
I guess I kind of touched on that earlier,
Yeah.
but a lot of it has to do with what just like talking to the director and the writer. In terms of the audition, it depends on the genre, depends on the network, depends on the kind of the directors and like how, depending on how descriptive the character outline is, right? So if the character outline is pretty bland and blanket, maybe I'll go with subversive. It's more just like when I'm reading it, what do I hear? What do I think? What scene do I see? And then, a couple of days later, I may reread it and then have a thought, oh, I could do it this way, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I wish I knew exactly. I mean, it's so case by case of like, am I going to try and give them exactly what they want, or am I going to try and be subversive with it? And usually it just comes down to like, if I have a bold idea that I think is worth doing, then I'll do it. But if not, I'm not going to try and force anything like that. Like I'll just give them what they want. But
Yeah.
I've always been a big ad libber and improver. So it's set by set, it's very different of how much they want you to do that and kind of take matters in your own hands. But the sets I have been on where there's a lot of improv, I've definitely left my mark on those characters that were not originally scripted that way. I just did
Yeah.
a feature film with some other young friends this summer where my character was not really supposed to be as funny or like loudmouthy as I made him, but I just felt the need to punch it up and just like they were like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you can improv," and I was just like, "All right." And so I was just really just trying to make my friends laugh every take, but then
Game on.
right, exactly. So well, and the first night we shot, at the end of the night, they were like, "Wow, John, good improv." I was like, "Was I improving? Was I ad lib?" I just didn't. I was like, I was just hanging out. And so after that, I was like, "All right, if you want it, I'll bring it." And so somehow, kind of, I stumbled backwards into a comedic relief role in that, which it's not really what that character was intended to be. But sometimes it just happens like that in terms of like what they need on the day, what I'm feeling, and I'd rather try something if I'm comfortable with the director and then say no than just keep it to myself and then be watching it back, be like, oh, I wish that would have been good if I. Of course, I'm going to do that regardless
Yeah.
of what happens on the screen. I'm going to be critical of my performance. Why'd you do that?
What advice would you give to aspiring actors entering the industry?
Um, so much advice. I mean, I would give that same piece of advice. If you can do anything else, do it. It's a fucked up industry. Unless like, if you can live doing something easier, if you can, be on your deathbed and be like, you know what, maybe I did. Go out and try it, but it's a lot of time and effort and commitment with very little reward. It's a lot more, glamorous from the Instagram page. Um,
Yes. Right.
but like you have to love doing it. Like I'm sure this isn't groundbreaking stuff, but don't do it for the the clout or the fame. Like do it because you love acting. Because if you're going to be auditioning every single day with these scripts, even if it does get frustrating at times, like you still have to have fun. When I'm doing 6 hours of auditions a day and screaming into my voiceover mic as a frog prince or whatever, I have to have fun with it. Otherwise, now my passion
Yeah.
is becoming work, right? Really, I mean, what can I say about like agents and managers and cast directors and all that bullshit? But really, it just like there's so many ways to do it. There's no straight line to it, right? You can go the audition route. You can just try to cold call agents and managers. You can create your own stuff. You can get into sketch and improv. You can do UCB and ground. There's a lot of ways to get out there and be seen. And there's no real right way to do it. But at the end of the day, I mean, you just got to get out. Like you just got to get out there. I mean, stand up was a way for me. I have a bunch of friends who do like groundlings and even theater and music and bands and whatnot. And I mean, I could ramble about this forever. Final thing I'll say is just like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't get too hard on yourself if you feel like
Yeah.
you're not where you want to be, because you're never going to be where you want to be. And if you have the choice between, I don't know, some people have better work-life balances than me, but it's really easy to sprint and make yourself bitter. If you feel like I need to get a good job, and then I need to audition, and then I need to go to the gym, and then I need, if you're only going to spend
Right.
3 years working really hard as opposed to 10 years working mildly hard, the 10 years is going to do more. So if you're really in it for the long run, don't feel like you need to burn yourself into the ground, because that's the
Right.
quickest way to get out of there, because you only really failed when you've quit.
Yeah. I was just you mentioned about the work-life balance. I was going to
Yeah.
ask, how do you manage your work-life balance? Not very well, or well,
Yeah,
or
well, no, I do personally. It's case by case, right? I'm lucky that I haven't had to work a day job in a couple of years. I've just kind of gone from acting gig to acting gig.
yeah.
But again, it's a more frugal lifestyle than some of my other friends who are working full time 9 to 5s and pursuing acting. And personally, that just couldn't be me. And it kind of depends on the ratio of auditions you have. Because for me, if I'm getting sent, this is due tomorrow at 10 a.m. at 6 p.m. and I have a shift, it's like it's cutting into my career. And so I would rather just commit and live out of savings and believe in myself that I am going to book something, because I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. But it's
Right.
easy to get nervous and seek stability in a business where there is no stability.
Right.
And so I think it's different for everybody. I think if you have the constitution to work a full-time or part-time job and audition at your full, capacity. I know for me, like I would be pooped. Like I would just, the auditions wouldn't be as good. So I'm doing a disservice to myself trying to earn more money and do this at the same time. Like I'd rather just put all my eggs in one basket. And that's not for everyone who wants to take trips to Vegas and whatnot. But it really, you got to figure out what's best for you for longevity's sake. It's hard to be, looking at it like, okay, what am I doing by December? What am I doing by February? What am I doing by April? And I'll kind of going back to the other question. Another piece of advice I got from an actor, Tom Wright, who was just in Daisy Jones and the Six. He plays the manager, and he's a great guy. And he told me, but right before I moved to LA, don't even look at your career till you're 5 years in.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because he's like, because there's just really not enough data points to know, because you could book nothing in your first 2 years, think, oh, I'm garbage. Book something in your third year, think, oh, I'm amazing, and then not book anything in your fourth year, book something in your fifth. And so, like, to have that line graph, you just need a certain amount of time, because this business is so slow and just takes so much time. And so,
Right.
going in and saying I'll spend a year in LA and see how it goes is kind of wasted time. Not to say LA isn't a fun city to spend a year, But
Yeah.
in terms of boots on the ground, trying to build a career, you kind of have to know that you're devoting a certain amount of time to it to even know whether you have a shot at it.
Right. That's very good advice. What are your plans for 2024?
Plans for 2024 are to kick ass and book everything and be awesome. And yeah, I mean, after 2023 and the strike and everything, I feel like the industry is ripe for proliferation of great content. So I'm looking forward to hitting
Yeah.
January, February hard with auditions and pilot seasons, and just looking forward to hustling. I mean, I did the horror movie that I mentioned that shot in April
Yeah.
2022, just premiered on Halloween this year, and it's still not the distribution rights still haven't been sold in the US. So hopefully that'll come out. It's called Blue Light by written and directed by
Yeah.
Andy Fickman. Shout out. And so I'm looking forward to that coming out. That was a really great passion project, both of his and just like the cast. That was a really, really fun shoot. But besides that, yeah, I'm just looking forward to more work and looking forward to yeah,